Hi, welcome to the CIPR Sports Network series. I'm Rebecca Roberts and I've recently joined the network, and I'm delighted to welcome Sarah Brown-Fraser from the Activity Alliance, and we're having a conversation all about inclusive communications and why it's so important in the sector, but to be honest, also everywhere. Thanks, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too. So tell us how the Activity Alliance and your work there in particular has been working to really improve the level and set the standard for inclusive communications in sport.
Yeah, so I'm the head of communications and policy at Activity Alliance, and Activity Alliance is the leading voice for disabled people in sports and activities. And around 12 years ago, I was doing some work on communications for another sector. Actually, I was working in sport, but actually the things I was learning from corporate sector, I was thinking, well, why isn't sport doing this? Why isn't sport thinking about accessibility? Why isn't sport thinking about how good communications could be? And it started the journey of doing resources around inclusive communications and just reading up myself and actually discovering the world we work in, the world we were employed in, actually isn't as accessible and inclusive as it could be for a lot of people that we're trying to reach. So a lot of resources were born, a workshop was born, the uptake was amazing. So we were then finding that not only sport and leaders in sport, I'm not even talking about grassroots sport, leaders in sport were saying, oh, I should be thinking about this in my role. And it was like a light bulb moment for a lot of people. And nothing we ever do is, people aren't wanting to be malicious, but, they want to include more disabled people, especially. But the more I did it for sport, the more other sectors were coming to us and saying, does it work in housing? Does it work in transport? And other sectors were then coming to us and saying, actually, it's quite transferable what we're teaching. And that's the start of the journey. And now we're here 12 years later, and we've got webinars and resources and workshops. And,
We shall link them all up in the comments.
Yes, please do. And I think I'm still living the dream of I still want people to learn and do it. And we're still a long way off, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, and I guess things evolve over time as well. Like those guides, what you had 12 years ago, the progress made since then. Like I've used your guides and they're really useful to kind of check in and go, how would I write this and how can I best talk about it? And how does this impact and provide opportunities for communicators within sport to improve, learn, and also kind of set the standards for how they talk about athletes and or sports themselves?
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point that I say an awful lot. If you ever come to a workshop, you'll hear me repeat it. That actually, when we talk about inclusive communications, it's just good communications. It's, there's no special sort of, way of doing things. You just think a bit differently when you start planning and when you start budgeting and when you start talking to other people. So actually think about it as just good communications. We're actually doing what we aim to do, and that's reach a lot of people. So actually, the things that we're teaching is just really about thinking differently and not actually thinking that you have to spend a fortune to do it right.
That's a really good point. And it's about, and I know we've talked about this before, about being able to communicate with your entire audience, rather than thinking like it's a separate thing to be inclusive. It's just making sure that everyone who could be in your audience is reached through your communications.
Yeah, and I think, and also when we teach things, you don't look at, when you've done it for as many years as I have and you have, you don't look at posters in the same way. You don't think about TV, your video campaigns in the same way. You start saying, who's missing out? Who's not going to see this wonderful campaign that I've designed? And, everyone should actually have an opportunity to access the beautiful communications that you're doing. So it's really about bringing your joy to other people, and ensuring that, people don't miss out. And I think we're living in a world now where we think, oh, got to do it quickly, got to do it cheaply, but actually we really need to start thinking, actually, there's a lot of people, when we get it right for visually impaired people, we get it right for older people. When we get it right for people whose first language isn't English, we get it right for people who have a learning impairment. So the cross transfer of audience and getting it right is really useful.
That's a really good point. And where do you feel like the wider media is at in terms of that kind of inclusive approach from language and sport, but also print, broadcast, right through to social media?
a long way off. Sorry, I got a bit of a tickle. It's got better in the time, and I've worked in predominantly sport for disabled people for my whole career, and we still see those benefit fraudsters, those scroungers, those disabled people who don't work, the real negative, the papers I'm talking about, the real negative image and perception of disabled people. And then we all start thinking, well, the readers are going to think that. But actually, what about self-perception? So actually, when disabled people see social media that's negative, when disabled people read a paper that's negative, what does that make? How does that make you feel? And actually, that's going to have an impact on the sports sector, because the more things we as disabled people read about, those disabled people, they're being active, but they're claiming benefits, the more we read about negative stories like that, then actually disabled people less and less will be active. So actually, as a sports leader, we want more people to enjoy the benefits of being active. But if we write negatively about it, it's going to have an impact on the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So the media does have a massive role in perceptions of ourselves and perceptions of disabled people. And actually, we've got a long way to do, especially in language, because it is right that we all educate ourselves and keep up with the evolving language that we have. But a lot of people are still not working with the social model of disability, which is a really important model that impacts positive language. So you'll hear me say disabled people. You won't hear me say things like handicapped and crippled and really negative words that I would never want to see on any communication. But it also is things like suffering from, words like suffering from and confined to, and those sort of languages actually that are really negative. And we've still got a long way to go in actually helping the sports sector, especially, get the social model of disability right.
It's a really good point. And so what advice would you give anyone who is working in or aspiring to work in sports communications when it comes to ensuring that their communications are right, and how they kind of help present that and kind of move things along to reach all audiences, but also around that social model?
Yeah, and I think probably at this point it's really important to say that not everyone gets it right. The fear factors that we all have, especially around language, is quite normal. And actually, we all sit and go, is that right? Are they going to be offended when I say that? The first rule is, if you're speaking one-on-one, ask that person what they prefer, because language is so subjective and so personal. Actually, it's important to actually get that person to agree with the way that you're talking about them. So there's that, but there are good guides, and we have guides available online for free that actually talk about terminology and the correct language that you can use. But I would always say, have those critical friends and those advocates in your own mix that actually can help you to judge how good your communications are in the language. But you can test it all the time. But I would always go to the right positive language resources to use them to refer to. And that's what we do.
Well, that's really helpful. And I think also having your own principles within your organisation to kind of make sure that you've got that consistency. So communications won't necessarily be writing every presentation, every bit of copy on the website, every media opportunity. So making sure that you're kind of consistent across the board. If staff need training, they're on it, kind of thing. So I think that can kind of show up poorly at times.
Yeah, definitely. Internal guidance is you're really bang on there. Internal guidance is really important. And it's not about the comms department. And I'm really passionate about, it's not about the comms department being your police. So actually, it's about everyone having that value of positive language and ensuring that internally you have those processes. Yes, it might be a bit of sign off, but often it's confidence building and actually knowing where those internal advocates should go to for the right language. And often you might get, well, my mate Dave, he likes that word, so I'm going to use my mate Dave's word. It's really important not to follow just your personal direction. You've got to really follow positive terminology that's recommended.
Agreed. And are there any examples of events, sports, or specific campaigns that come to mind that you feel have really stood out as best practice in recent times?
Oh, Well, it's got better, and I said that at the beginning. It's got better. So, I mean, campaigns like, especially the latest phase from This Girl Can, has really moved forward in terms. And I'll talk about it a lot in when I do speeches and things. You might not see, but I'm a wheelchair user. I'm a head of communications. I am not a Paralympian. So actually, my big discussions discussion points tend to be around the intersectionality of disabled people. So really thinking that disabled people do not fit into just one box. I'm a woman first. I might be a mother first. I come with different motivations than just being disabled. So campaigns that, like This Girl Can, that talk to me as a woman, actually really do inspire me in terms of wanting to be active, because it's talking to me as a woman, not as a disabled person. So really thinking about campaigns that actually, when you are running women's campaigns, children's campaigns, men's health campaigns, thinking about the intersectionality that comes with every strand of being a woman, for example. So campaigns like This Girl Can, I've worked on things like Football Your Way, which is really thinking about the accessibility of football campaigns. There's wider global ones, and there was one last year, I'm saying last year, it could be 2 years, that was around Down syndrome, and actually it was called Assume I Can.
Pause, is it? Yeah, I think I've seen that one. Brilliant. That was my favourite one.
It's got swearing in it, so be careful around children with it. But it's actually about her saying, well, why do you assume I can't? Just assume I can. And it really touches on the negative perceptions and turns it around of people with Down syndrome. And I really enjoyed that, because it actually chose a creative way around. It wasn't making her seem like it was, feel sorry for her. It was about actually her empowerment, as saying, actually, I can do all these things. So those sort of campaigns will always make me think creatively. But there's a lot better things I can talk about now than I could 10 years ago.
Which is all good progress. And where can people find some of the guides and help that you've kind of recommended?
activityalliance.org.uk. So if you go into our resources section, you'll find we have fact sheets on different strands of communication. So if you don't want to read our 48-page guide, of which I do recommend, but I understand 48 pages can be quite hard to read. And it's still, it's passing it's sense of time, as it's still relevant right now. So there's fact sheets. There's also learning modules and e-learning that you can access on our learning hub as well. So everything available. We do have workshops. So if it is, you feel like your team actually requires an in-person workshop or an online workshop, and I usually lead those, we can arrange those as well if you go to our pages and find out more.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. I will link you up in all the comments so people can follow you and find out more about you. But yeah, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.